Hello, and welcome to our webinar. So really appreciate you coming in, and I'm just going to get my screen all up and loaded. So again, thanks. A couple housekeeping items. If you're on the site and it says www at the top, please take that away. You'll still get the live webinar, but it'll make some mistakes in our chat room. So we want you to have the capabilities of sending some chats along or making some comments. So if you could just take that away, that would be great, and we'll get started. So my name's Darren Steeves, and Jesse Adams is also online, and as you're well aware, we're with Vendura Wellness, and again, we're really glad you're here. We're not going to eat up a ton of your time because I know here in Halifax it's an absolutely beautiful day, and I hope it is wherever you are in the world. And so we're going to hopefully give you time to be physically active. I'm also going to let you know that I'm going to ask you to do some stuff during the workshop. So no groaning, no moaning. It wouldn't make any sense to just sit here and talk the whole time. Maybe you're actually out for a walk right now or doing something physically active while you listen. If that's the case, outstanding. You're already getting some of the concepts and ideas. That's terrific. So again, hopefully everyone can see my screen, and if not, just send Jesse a message, and we'll make sure that that you can. So we're going to start talking about my apologies, I'm at the end. Just bring it back to the start. First glitch. So the first thing that I want to talk about is I actually sent out a worksheet for you, and a few of you signed up for today, so you might not have been able to do it, and I'll send it out to you so you can do it. But we actually asked you to take a look at your vision. And during this workshop, I'm actually going to talk about some personal stuff. So I'll give you some examples from my life, probably from Jesse's life, and probably from some clients that we've worked with in the past and some groups that we've worked with. We believe the first step in kind of our motivational model or having some motivation is actually setting a vision. So within the worksheet, you saw the expectation ladder. And again, hopefully you had a chance to do that. And what we're talking about is trying to set a realistic vision for yourself. So let me start here with giving you mine. Mine is at the age of 75, laughing and carrying on with my wife as we bike down a street in France with a bag of vegetables in the cart. That may sound and put hopefully a smile on a few people's faces, but there's a lot of meaning behind that. And you can hopefully start to see what's important to me. And I actually have that vision, and I think about that on a regular basis. So mine is kind of a long-term vision, where our expectation ladder is kind of a short-term vision. So you can see that I want to be financially stable. I want to be able to do physical activity when I age. I want to have a meaningful relationship with my wife. I still want to be eating fruits and vegetables and eating well. And one of our passions is traveling. So that gives you an idea of why I do what I do on the run of a day. Again, that's my long-term vision, and I honestly try to think about that at least a couple times a week, if not on a daily basis. So if anyone during this webinar wants to make a comment, Jesse's there, and I'll be watching to see if people make comments. Feel free to do that, and we'll be checking periodically, and maybe I'll make some comments on it. So we believe that is step one. Step two is actually looking at the value of your personal health, and I'm going to use the term personal health right here, right now. So there's two things behind that. One is, where do you actually place it in your own value system? So let me give you an example. Say it's a Friday night, you're heading home from work, and here are your options. You've got a call, you can go to the bar with your friends who are gathering together for a couple drinks. Your brother calls and says, no pressure, but I just got the wood dropped in my driveway and I need to be able to stack it tonight because it's supposed to rain tomorrow. You haven't been physically active all week, and you were planning on putting the shoes on and going for a walk as soon as you got home. And then you just realize that the series finale of your favorite show is on television. So I want you to be able to think about that and say, what would you actually choose to do? I'm never saying it's an exact simple answer, because maybe the brother, needs your help and you have to go. But when you actually start to think about these scenarios, and I live them day to day, and I know Jesse and I talk about them, and I've talked about with clients, what you actually decide to do, or the hierarchy you put those in, starts to actually take a look at your values. And that goes on a day in, day out basis. Am I going to work on this project because it's going to get me ahead in my job, in school? So that's what's important. If anyone can just send a message, if hopefully they're getting this, and we'll make sure that it's working. Okay, so let's continue on. My apologies, a little bit of a glitch. I'm just getting a message from Jesse. Want to make sure we're working. So we believe that equals success. So now actually let's look at what the intro to barriers. So let's actually look at what is a barrier. Barriers can be perceived or real, so they can be real or not. So there's two things that we want to think about while we're here: is personal barrier and then also an environmental barrier. Oh, great. Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate the feedback that we're actually coming through live and working well. Appreciate that. So we have a personal barrier and we have environmental barriers. So the personal ones are pretty obvious, and we're going to go through those in a second. When we actually get to environmental barriers, we're going to actually ask you to potentially be advocates in your workplace and in your community. That's going to be important. So these are two things that are forces acting on us to take us away from our potential healthy behaviors, and we're going to take a look at those. A lot of them are going to be fairly common sense, and you're going to know them. So let's take a look at those right now. So how do barriers actually affect us? Well, we probably know that they're going to stop or prevent a healthy behavior, and that's what we're trying to accomplish, is create a behavior, create a habit. And there's lots of books in the library on actually creating a habit, and that's what we're trying to do. The problem is, if we actually let our barriers come up against us, and if we hit that brick wall like the person in our picture, it typically leads to unhealthy behavior. If anyone want to make a comment at this point, you can. But it also can lead to unhealthy behaviors, whether that's, it starts to snow, you decide, oh, I'm not going outside, it's snowing, what do? We turn to chips. Or, I don't have energy. What do we end up doing is laying on the couch and not being physically active, or we turn to an iPad. So that's what we're thinking about here, is we want to break the healthy behavior because there's a catastrophic event. It actually leads to the unhealthy behavior. So what are these barriers that we talk about? Okay, at this time, what I'd like you to do is stand up while I keep speaking, and you can do any stretch that you know. You can take your hands up over your head and stretch tall. You can put your hands into your low back and stretch. The key thing that I want you to do right now is actually get up out of your chair. I'm sure many of you have started to see the publicity and the media around we're sitting too much as a community, as a society. So get up, do any stretch that you want to. If you want to hold on to your table, grab your leg, pull it back, do a hamstring stretch. Let's do that right now while we continue on. So here's one that probably hits home to a lot of people, is that a lot of people will experience this barrier: energy. I don't have energy. And we hear that a lot, especially when I was doing the training piece. I don't know if anyone else experiences this. If so, feel free to send a message in and let us know that, yeah, energy is one of mine for sure. So we know that when we do surveys, about 60% of Canadians actually express this. And when I've done this talk before, I've probably done it over 100 times, what I say is it's too bad that we couldn't bottle up how we feel after some really good physical activity, or going out for a walk, or mowing the lawn. And we all know deep down that we actually feel really good about that. We feel good. If we could bottle that up, put it in our pocket, and whenever we have that low energy, take a whiff of it, that would probably help us keep going. But unfortunately, no one's mass produced that perfume yet. And if you can do it, you'll probably make a lot of money and make a lot of people more physically active. So we need to beat that. Okay, Terry, I'm sorry to hear that. Hopefully it keeps coming in as opposed to cutting in and out on you. Let's talk about some of the barriers to beat this energy barrier. If you're still stretching, you can have a seat again. You can take a break. You've probably earned it if you've done a couple stretches. So we know that people that exercise first thing in the morning, hopefully if you get a good night's sleep, that's when you've got some energy. So getting it done first thing in the morning is probably going to come up a few times during this talk, because we do know that adherence goes up with those people who exercise in the morning. But it's saying that that cannot happen for everyone. It's not simple for everyone to put it in the morning. The key thing that I think stands out here is schedule activity when you have the most energy. And this is, again, going to come through during our quick talk here, is you actually want to take a look over the next 4 or 5 days and say, when do I actually have my most energy? For me, I know when it is. It's at lunchtime. So somewhere between 11:30 and 2, 3 o'clock is when I'm actually physically active and I exercise. I actually very rarely can do it in the evening. So that's when I choose to do it. Fortunately, I work for myself now, but when I worked actually Dalhousie University, it's something that I talked to my boss about, and I know when I have the most energy, and he was great with it and let me do it when I want to. I know my friend Jesse, he and my business colleague, he does it first thing in the morning, so I know not to contact him between about 8:30 and 10, because that's when he chooses to do his physical activity. So take a look at your schedule, see when you have the most energy, and then you need to address it with whoever you need to try to fit it in during those times. So having real conversations is also going to come up a number of times during my talk, is whether it's with your spouse, your boss, your coworkers, whoever it is you need to speak to, you might actually have to address it with them. The other thing is break it up into small increments. So a lot of times we can feel overwhelmed by saying, oh, I need to get 30 minutes of physical activity, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. And that was probably big, if you all remember Participaction, where we said, why not try 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at lunch, and 10 minutes in the evening? So that might be able to help you keep the energy, because some of us maybe haven't been physically active for 10 or 15 years. So going out for 30 minutes will actually have an issue to have the energy to do the 30 minutes. So you can break it up into small increments. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And also another key feature, which I think stands out for me, is mental fatigue can also be mirrored or masked as physical fatigue. So you actually have to, and this is going to come up again, similar to a lot of the themes here, it's going to come up a number of times, that you actually need to have positive self-talk. You need to remind yourself, a lot of the times you feel lack of energy, it's actually some mental fatigue. You've used up all your brain units for that day. So it's not really physical fatigue, it's mental fatigue. And you have to remind yourself that this is mental fatigue. I'm going to go out and be physically active because I actually do have the physical energy to do it. And in actual fact, we know that that's probably going to put some more brain units back in. You're going to be able to be productive again, say if you're at work. So keep that in mind while you're doing it. Okay, let's talk about time. But first, if you're at a desk watching this, please stand up, and I'd like you to do 4 quick squats at whatever level you think you can do. If you have a knee issue or a back issue, do mini squats. Again, let's just get up out of the chair and do some quick movement while you continue to listen to me ramble on about this stuff. Okay, so let's hit the biggest one that we hear about on a regular basis. Again, if anyone can attest to this, feel free to write in and let us know that nearly 70% of us will say that time is an issue. So why commit the time? This comes back to the first slide that we talked about, and one of the handouts that I sent out is, why do you value it? So you really need to do a little bit of soul searching and say, why do I actually want to be physically active? So again, if anybody wants to send a comment in, I mean, I can tell you why I do it. It's for my own mental health, so I can keep my anxiety suppressed and down, because if I'm not physically active, my wife can tell, I get anxious, my family can tell, and that's what happens. So one of the things that I'd like you to think about, when we did those values, you did take a look at some of the benefits, but I'd actually like you to write those down, keep them near your desk at work, keep them in your car, keep them on your nightstand. Those are the things that you're going to revisit on a regular basis to say, okay, this is why I'm living, this is why I'm looking after my personal health, this is why I'm living well. It's because I don't want to have cardiovascular disease. I'm going to reduce my pain. So what are the reasons that you're doing that? So if there's any anyone, like I said, wants to make a comment or why they actually are either looking at physical activity or why they do it on a semi-regular or regular basis, that's important. So how much time is enough? And we probably get that question a lot. My joke is always, if it was the 14th century, you wouldn't be asking me how much is enough, because it would be 14 hours a day to live, because we'd be fixing the roof and making the vegetables, we'd be tending to the cattle, we were doing all those things. And as humans, that's what we were meant to be. Awesome, Melanie. I see that you walked on the boardwalk at 6. That's great. I totally agree. It does help clear the mind. So there's a good suggestion. Already using some of the things that we talked about, getting up early in the morning, clearing the head, using it as part of a mental health initiative as well. So how much time is enough? Again, we get that question, like I said, and we jokingly say that it would be 14 hours a day if it was the 14th century, but we're not in the 14th century, and a lot of our jobs are sedentary jobs. So to get 150 minutes a week would be awesome. We know if we acquire about 150 minutes a week, you start to maximize a lot of these health benefits that people are doing it for. And when we actually look at the Canadian average, the two that stand out for me is the 12% and the 18%. So the 12% is unpaid work and the 18% is TV watching. So we know that in Canada, that on average, Canadians watch 24 hours a week of television, and that goes up year in, year out. There's a number of reasons why. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but there's 30% of your time that you might be able to tap in and use and get some more physical activity. Now, the unpaid work might be volunteering for your local, association that's important to you and not for profit, and that's great. But let's look at that 18%. Why can't we set up a bike in front of the television or use that type of technique to actually get some physical activity, or listen to a podcast while we walk or mow the lawn? So we actually have to think about, how can I multitask if it's not fitting into my work day? But those are two areas that I'd like you to take a look at and say, okay, maybe it's unpaid work that you're actually doing at work, which some of the research shows as well. Actually, why not take that 12%, be physically active, and then you're probably going to be more productive in your actual paid work time, that 22% that you can see. So what to do? Break it up, similar to our last suggestion. So again, it doesn't feel like such a daunting task to do 30 minutes or 60 minutes. And actually, the research shows us, and our experience has been, if you do more than 60 minutes, the likelihood of you sticking with it is less and less. So break it up throughout the day. Go out for your walk at 6 a.m. like we're hearing online, and then go out at lunchtime for a quick 10 minutes. If it feels like doing a 30-minute walk or go to the gym just feels too daunting in the midday, try to break it up throughout the day. The key thing, here's the key one in this barrier, is create a plan. So again, I've worked with hundreds, almost thousands of people and athletes and so forth and groups, and so has Jesse. Put it in the schedule and nothing takes that place. Actually, I work with people and say, you can give me a couple reasons that would take that place, but we need to come to agreement on it. And I usually try to lead people down the path to two things. You're physically sick, or there's a family emergency. I'll give you those two. Other than that, you're going to have a hard time to convince me that anything takes its place. So we started to say, this is when I have the most energy. This is when I'm fitting it in. I've already talked to my employer and they've said, okay, let's do it. So it's in the plan, nothing takes its place. That's one of the keys that actually keeps people adhered to physical activity. Same thing goes for sleep. 10 o'clock, everyone knows that's when I'm going to bed. That's when I'm hitting the rack. That's when I'm going to get my sleep. Look for support. That's important as well. So that could be finding a buddy or a person, or again, back to the work scenario, where you actually have a conversation with your superior, your supervisor, and say, hey, your HR department, this is really important to me. How can we make this work? Make your own pie chart. So log for a day. Actually see where you're using your time. And again, Jesse and I have done that throughout the years with a number of people, a number of groups, and it's always surprising, and people get shocked at, ooh, I am spending a lot of time here and here, when I really I want to focus on my physical activity. So that becomes the pros and the cons part of your reward and demand balance sheet to say, okay, I can actually fit this in, and here's where I'm going to try to fit it in. Be creative. And here's what we're already trying to be creative today. So again, I'd like you to stand up, and you can either do push-ups at your desk just on an incline, or do a few more squats, or you can do another stretch right now for me, please. And in the future, we're actually going to have where we can see you on the webcam. So I'm actually going to be able to see people do this. But today I'm going to take your word for it that you're doing your exercise as I ask you. So again, feel free to comment if you have any neat ideas of how you're making it fit in. I know Lauren said she loved the boardwalk idea, which I totally agree. And I have a friend down the street who does meditation walking every morning. He's part owner of Breathing Space Yoga. So walking meetings, again, Jesse and I do it. We've advocated for a number of companies that we work with. If it's not an important meeting that can, other ears can hear, go for a walk and do it. Park farther away from work. Again, when I worked at Dalhousie University here in Halifax, I would suggest people to park at the Bay, which is now the CBC building, because at 4:30, it's going to take them 45 minutes to get from Dal in their car bumper to bumper to the Bay, where they could walk it in 20 minutes. Go into the mall, ask them, is it okay if I park here? Here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Probably 3 times a week, I'm going to come in here and buy something. So why not let me park here? I'll walk 15 minutes to work, and I'll walk 15 minutes back, because it's actually going to take 40 minutes in traffic. So there's a multitasking use of your time. Play with your kids. How many times do I go to the park and actually see parents sitting, sipping on coffee, or just kind of watching the kids? Get up at some intervals and play with them. It's a perfect opportunity to have some fun with your children, and then also get some activity. Walk and watch. So I mow the lawn and listen to a podcast, something that I really enjoy to do. So I multitask there. And I put in mow your lawn because here's another personal story. Last year I had a young man mow my lawn all last summer, and this year my wife came a week ago and said, are you going to get him to mow the lawn again? And I said, no. And she said, are you going to have time? I said, I'm going to make time, because here's a time I can listen to my podcast. I can mow the lawn. Takes an hour and a bit. I actually like it. I'm outside. I'm getting activity. So it kind of fit the research that shows as males become a more affluent and grow with age, they actually become less active, because partly we start hiring people to do it. Here's another one, lack of skill. As we can see, it fits about 30%. I don't know if anyone has experienced this. Feel free to comment if you have, where you've actually gone to, say, a fitness center and went, oh my goodness, this is not for me. I do not feel comfortable here. And you start to feel self-conscious in these things. And that is normal. It's very normal. You can see that 30% cite this reason as a barrier. So what are we going to do about that? First of all, I did it for 20 years. Feel free to consult a professional. They're well worth it. There's lots of great people out there. You can send me a message if you need some people in your community. I know them all over Canada and actually through North America. So it's probably well worth the money to invest in that. Start with something that you know. So there's probably a reason that men's recreational hockey is up 600% in Canada, because people know they need to be physically active and they're going back to something that they know. So that's always a good idea as well. Take a class. Here's a more affordable option than consulting with a professional, is actually joining in a class where you're getting some instruction. You're getting all the motivational benefits as well of being with a group, but it lowers the cost to, say, anywhere from $5 or $10. And I know I was talking last night online, and someone said your community offers all kinds of free services as well. So your recreational centers in your cities and your provinces and your states do that as well. Avoid the crowds. So I worked at a fitness center for a good 10 years. And what I found was people chose the times, and we actually started posting them, if Terry Moore remembers, at the YMCA, of when our busy times were. So it helped people so they could get and do efficient workout, but it also helped people that felt they were self-conscious. So they could come in at 10 or 2 p.m. or whenever the downtimes were, so they didn't have to be there with a large crowd. And again, start with activities with no skills. You'll see that one all over the internet. So walking. Start with something that doesn't take, or you don't have to start with weight training and using a treadmill and using a stair climber, which used to have people frustrated, like, what am I punching? And we even learned in the fitness centers, just buy the ones that, you know, say start and go, and that's it. Weather. Here's a good funny one. How many people experienced that this year? I know here in Eastern Canada, we probably heard a lot of times, I'm not going out there. I don't know if anyone else felt that over the winter. Feel free to comment, but that was probably one that we heard a substantial amount, and even heard in my house. Not that I'm a big fan of Dr. Phil, and many people might not even know who he is, but I'll give you the Dr. Phil. There really are no excuses. I've really heard them all. Jesse's heard them all. There really are no excuses that you're going to make us go, oh, okay, don't be physically active. So the other thing that comes along with this, what we talked about before, is actually when we don't do a healthy behavior, we usually turn to an unhealthy behavior. And here's one that I heard for the first time this year was storm chips. It was actually all over Facebook. Jesse and I had some good laughs about it, but here was a classic example where we didn't do a healthy behavior, like go out and shovel or go out for a walk, and it actually turned to an unhealthy behavior. So what do we want to do? Have a backup plan. Pretty simple. So if the weather isn't going to be great, what are we going to do? Well, I was supposed to go for a run, but I guess I'm shoveling. That's good physical activity. Plan ahead. So actually, I know we all joke about that, you know, put your head out the window here in Nova Scotia, and that's how you determine the weather. But actually take a look and say, okay, here's what I'm planning to do tomorrow. Here's the weather. Is it going to affect me? Focus on your vision and values. That's the key. Have that vision in your head. If you want to write it down, outstanding, post it. Post your values. Remember on a day in, day out basis, why am I doing this? And adapt. So we just talked about that. You know, be able to do something on the fly. Have a bank of 3 or 4 things that you can do, so you're not just relying on that one activity to be physically active. And again, I think this streams through it, is have a buddy. It was something that I started at the YMCA when we got there in conjunction with Terry and Kent, another individual there. We actually started a buddy program at the YMCA where people could fill out a piece of paper and they would show up on my desk and I would match people up. But you can probably just put the word out at work and in your social community, and you'll know, hey, I actually like to walk, and I walk at 6 a.m. So maybe people could join in with Melanie, for example, and walk with her, and you know, use your each other's motivation to make that happen. So lack of motivation, that's probably one that we hear quite a bit as well, of course. And that one's tough. We totally admit it. We all go through peaks and valleys on motivation. So what are we going to do for that? How are we going to stay motivated? Well, we already said, let's use our vision and our values. And now we're trying to break down those barriers. So give yourself a reward. So if you do next 6 weeks, you get the 150 minutes, give yourself a reward, maybe a night at a hotel, whatever is going to motivate you. Make sure that it's individual. Let's not hope it's a fast food Happy Meal, for example, but hopefully you can give yourself a reward that is meaningful to you to motivate you to go do it again. Sign a contract with yourself. We used to do that as personal trainers or exercise physiologists. And there's nothing wrong with you actually sitting down right now and saying, I'm going to commit to this, and this is why. We also used to do it with families. So we'd have take it home to the family, and everyone sign an agreement that mom or dad or whomever is going to exercise from 7 to 8, and I'm not going to ask for allowances. I'm not going to ask for drives. I'm not going to ask for help during those times, because I know it's important to my mom, my dad, my guardian, my caretaker, my helper, that's important in their time, and I want to support them in that. Again, rethink positive thinking. It really does make a difference, folks. On a moment-to-moment basis, notice your thoughts that you're having. Try to switch from negative ones to positive ones. Keep it positive. Know that you can commit to this. Know that you can make it happen. Invite a friend. We've said it almost in every barrier. Actually having that social support network is really important. And distract yourself. So Is it podcasts? Is it watching your iPad on the stationary bike? What is it? What's going to actually maybe keep you going? So combining two things you like is not a bad thing as long as it's safe. I just wanted to touch on environmental barriers. I know I'm running into some time issues here, but I wanted to throw up that there's these compounding outside influences that are going to affect your likelihood of being successful. And you need to become a bit of an advocate and take an active role. And we actually have some HR people online. So we do know that, I mean, this is our business. This is what we do. This is what we believe in. This is why Jesse and I went into this, and Lauren and the other people that we have involved with us, is that we believe that barriers in the workplace are going to make it really hard to live a healthy lifestyle. So there are some ones there. I'm not going to read them out loud, but we've heard these time and time again when I worked at different facilities and when we're working with facilities is, if I decide to bike to work, for example, is my bike going to be there when I get out? Can I actually bring it in and put it in a storage room? Is that going to be a problem at the work? Is there a place that I can clean up? So if your company is moving locations, have you thought about putting in a shower facility? Have you thought about moving close to a fitness center where you could have an arrangement with them to actually allow people to get cleaned up? Do you actually have a culture of wellness? Are you actually supporting it? Or are you taking the initiative as the employee to go to your employer and say, this is important to me? How can you support me on this? So we're putting the two-way street here, that it's not just the organization creating this perfect culture of wellness. Are you actually helping foster that? So those are something to think about, that you might want to actually spark a conversation in your workplace, or whether you're on the HR or the CEO or the senior manager team, or actually as an employee or within the workforce. The other one is actually our community, and this is something that I've been an advocate of here in my hometown of Halifax, and when I was in St. John, is we were in a community that sidewalks weren't a priority. We certainly know the bike lane issues here in Halifax, and I'm sure if you're in a different community, which I know some people are, you're probably experiencing it. We're experiencing the traffic calming issue here in our new neighborhood right now. Facilities, are we going to, it was a battle to get the oval here in Halifax. Fortunately, we got it. And picking a community that has social cohesion, and I will let you know, here's another personal example. My wife and I moved 2 years ago, and one of the factors that we chose was that we're near a park. We're involved in a community that's very active. That was part of the reason that we picked this community. So not that you have to spend, those 12 hours of unpaid work just focused on supporting your community, but when you get the opportunity, please take that opportunity to say, we want better bike lanes. If you're driving behind someone on a bike, don't get frustrated. Have the positive self-talk that someone's trying to take the initiative to be healthy. I'm going to support them by slowing down and waiting till I can get out around them. Support that new communities or new subdivisions have sidewalks and have play facilities for the kids. So the bottom line is, we actually have to take the initiative in our environment so we can foster physical activity. If anyone's done that in their community, feel free to make a comment. So we sent out a number of sheets for you to fill out. This isn't the exact one that we sent out, but you got one on a decision balance sheets, values. So I'm going to actually send another one to you. And what I'm going to ask you to do, and the other thing that I will mention, is you're going to be able to replay this. You're going to get an email with the opportunity to replay this, and you can toggle through and scrubber bar through and listen to different parts that you want to, or if you want any information that I sent, feel free to email me. But we're going to ask you to obviously pick physical activity because we talked about it. I'd like you to think about the barrier, which you actually got a sheet on that I sent out prior to, which actually asked you to answer questions, and you could kind of figure out what are your biggest barriers. Then I'd like you to pick a couple action steps, whether it's the ones that we mentioned today or other ones that you've thought of and done, which would be great. So here's an example of a sheet filled out. I will keep a list of benefits beside my desk and work and reaffirm one a day. So make a list, put it beside your desk. Sunday night, I'll review my schedule and fit in the 4 workouts that I'm going to do that week. and I will log my activities for 7 days and see where I'm using my time. So those are 3 action steps, 3 strategies that someone could do to try to move towards being physically active. So we're going to send that sheet out either today or tomorrow morning so you can work on it, and we'll get back to you to see how you're doing with it. Hopefully that makes sense. So to recap, again, sorry for being a little over, but I always get excited. Feel free to stand up while I do this one and do another one of your stretches or squats or what have you. This is probably the most important statement that we'll make, that Jesse and I make during this talk, is it's okay to fail. It is normal. So I've had the good fortune to work with over 20 Olympic athletes, and 95% of the time they fail at their goals. The key thing is they keep trying and they keep trying. My brother is an addiction counselor. He wrote tobacco literature for the province, for the city. He's done 30 papers, and he used to do workshops all the time. And we know in tobacco, in smoking, the old adage is it takes 7 times to quit. Why is that? Well, first of all, that one's a pretty heavy addiction, but also people learn, like, okay, when I get stressed, I turn back to smoking. And so it's okay. So if you've failed in the past at physical activity, guess what? We all have. It's okay. Think back to say, okay, I did this a year ago. Why did I stop? That is the first place to start, is why did I actually stop the physical activity? Then you can actually start to strategize in the future, as we talked about being a strategist, and say, okay, this is how I'm going to get past that this next time it happens. Positive self-talk, I think, is extremely important, and reminding yourself why you're doing this. That's why we suggest writing it down, putting it somewhere where you see every day. That's going to help. And I do it myself. I actually have a list posted right here that I'm looking at. Become a planner and a strategist. As we've said numerous times during the barriers, plan it, plan it, plan it. Don't leave it to chance, because we know what happens when we leave it to chance. At 6 o'clock at night, you know, the family's calling, you've got extra work to do, the lawn needs to be taken care of, which is good because that's physical activity, but there becomes all kinds of things. So put it in your plan and strategize how you're going to make it happen. And the last one that we'll mention is have some fun, folks. So if you can do your activity inventory, try to find some things that you actually enjoy. So if you like walking, great. If you kind of tolerate walking, but like to listen to a podcast, I really like that. I laugh and carry on. Or I really like walking with Linda or John or Jamie. Awesome. Make sure you have some fun, because then you're more likely to do it. So that's why I choose to play hockey a couple times a week. I run, which I tolerate because I like the feeling afterwards, and I remind myself of that when I'm going, I don't feel like going for a run. I actually do what I told in that energy strategies. I start to think about how I feel after I run. It makes me feel less anxious. I feel like I can tackle the rest of the day. So that's why it's critical for me. Those are the critical things that I do in my own plan. So I don't know if there's any closing comments, but that's what I have for today. Again, sorry for going over a little bit of time. Hopefully you took something away. This presentation is going to be available again in, you'll get an email shortly, and you can rewatch anything that you want. Feel free to share it if you'd like. Love to get some feedback if you'd like. Darren, you've got my email because it was sent to you, or you have Jesse's email. It's darren@vandorawellness.com. Honestly, we started this business over a year ago because we want to help people. We want to make a difference in our community on a more global scale. We want to be able to help more people with some of the strategies that we found successful working with individuals and groups. And today was just a bit of a taste of some things of how we've helped people get past the barriers to live physically well. So if there's no further comments, outstanding, thanks a lot. You're on our list. We're going to do webinars on a regular basis, so hopefully you can join us and take advantage.